Hey everyone, Dr. Baron Grutter here. In this video, I'm just going to go over one of the latest and honestly one of the greatest updates to the BlueSkyPlan software, and that is the addition of the ability to have the software um, apply the intrusion extrusion, the byte leveling portion of the alignment. Up until now, up until recently, I should say, the software has had the ability to correct rotations and tipping, okay, in multiple directions. And in this video, I'm going to show how the software can now actually intrude and extrude teeth. So, apologize, don't have the lower shown right now. So here you can go. This is a pretty crowded case, and you can, if you're done a fair amount of ortho, first of all, you'll know that it's very obvious, I would say, from the outset. The upper doesn't have a ton of bite leveling to do. These canines are a bit extruded compared to the incisors, but we got a deep bite. You can see it especially on the lower. I'm going to say that's the most obvious arch, of the two of them, where we have some significant leveling to accomplish. Now, I'm using this as a bit of an extreme case because this is a case that's going to be much easier to do with brackets and wires. As far as doing the intrusion extrusion, but I've seen some pretty impressive things done. I've done some pretty good intrusion extrusion with aligners, but I'm not necessarily saying, hey, you see a patient like this, you should throw aligners on them. I'm not trying to communicate that point necessarily. I'm more just trying to show you how the software can now, at least on a computer screen, correct for these issues. So I'll leave it at that for now. But anyway, so let's talk about what the software allows us to do here. First of all, you'll see the addition of these options over here in the snap to curve phase. Okay, so we can set this to level to the teeth, level them to the curve. We can set them to level to the opposing teeth if we just want to make sure our teeth are all nice and in occlusion. And then we can also go back to the default, our previous version where we had no leveling. It would just align things, and then you could one by one do any sort of bite leveling was required, which isn't the worst thing. I mean, we've been doing that for years, and it works. But now having the ability for the software to get that started, and I'll tell you, it's not always perfect by any stretch, but just like the initial alignment isn't always perfect, but it can save you a lot of time and get you in a ballpark. And making some sort of macro adjustments, having it fix everything at the same time. You'll see what I mean in a moment. So we can also adjust the occlusal plane. So if we want to have it level to the curve in certain ways, we'll see that we can do so by clicking this button. So for instance, let's just do a quick example here. If I'm going to, let me just spin this around so I'm coming right from the profile. Okay, so if I want to level to the curve, if I click on adjust occlusal plane, I could say, and this is an extreme example, I wouldn't say do this, but say you wanted to, really flatten out that curve of SPE and kind of connect the dots between the second molar and the first premolar, and then have everything level to that. Well, I've adjusted that, and I can say snap all teeth. And here you go. So what it does, yeah, it's all right. It levels things off, and then it has certain parameters for the front teeth, such as we want the canines to be 1/10 of a millimeter away from the line, and we want the incisors to be 1/2 a millimeter. So that creates a slight drop here. And so yeah, in this case, I would say, okay, well, this premolar right here, I don't love that, so I tweak that a little bit, and yeah, I mean, maybe you'll bring these down just a touch. It's all about where the landmark, where the software interprets the top of the tooth as, which can be a little tricky. And I'm not looking at IPR, and this isn't trying to be exact, but you can see how clicking that one button and then doing some very minor tweaking really allowed me to level this whole arch out. So that's sort of what that functionality is if you want to level to the curve. Whereas leveling to the opposing arch is something, if you're doing both arches, or you're going to sequence all your movements, well, that's probably going to be more common, and I'll explain that a little bit more. The problem is, though, not the problem, but the reality is, if you're going to do so, you need to make sure you're leveling both arches, or addressing both arches. Because right now, if I went to just level to opposing teeth, you'll see that my curve gets right up into these teeth, these anterior teeth, which are sort of retroclined. So if I start to snap all these teeth, you're going to see something crazy happen to these lower anterior teeth. First it resets them, and now it's going to try to align them within this curve, but also on an incisal-occlusal relationship. So a lot of intrusion there. And actually what's happening there is it's trying to connect the dots between these back teeth. Point being, if you're going to use level to opposing teeth, it's a very useful tool, and it's actually what I prefer to use, but it's got a little more nuance to it because it requires that the opposing teeth be well aligned. And if my curve that I've shaped for this lower arch is expanded, ideal size, but the upper is still constricted, well, it's going to be banging in cusp to cusp, which is why some of these teeth get really a lot lower. So anyway, I'm going to keep working ahead. I'm going to kind of show you a little more of the features here. So let's go ahead and reset these teeth. And then now, so we've gone through, we got the level of the curve, level of the opposing teeth, no leveling, and then of course snap teeth. This is where we can adjust these parameters. If you want these to be different, you can adjust them right here. We would call these local parameters because when you change these, it's only going to affect this case. In a moment, I'm going to show you where the global parameters are, which is sort of like the defaults. You can adjust the occlusal plane, which I showed you. You can edit the curve, which I've done that in many other videos, but that's just adjusting the actual shape of this curve. We're not going to mess with that in this video. And then I'm trying to think, that's pretty much it for this video as far as what I'm trying to show you. So I'm going to go ahead and also come up here to Tools, Preferences, and this is where we're going to see those global parameters, which means the actual software defaults. So if we come down here, we're going to see upper central distance to the curve, 0.5 millimeter. This is the upper arch. I apologize. We were just talking about the lower. So the lower canines, 0.1. Lower incisors, 0.5. Now we didn't talk about the upper yet, but here we can see it here. Upper centrals to the curve, 0.5 millimeter. Upper laterals, 1 millimeter. These are all kind of user preferences, and you'll get to see as you design your own cases. You'll say, hey, you know what? Actually, I don't like that. Maybe you want the centrals all the way on it, and you want the laterals 0.5 millimeter off. Whatever. You can change those to your liking, so you have that control. These are just the defaults the software comes installed with. Lastly, when we talk about aligning teeth to the opposing arch, these parameters show that anterior teeth and posterior teeth, how much contact, collision can there be? And now this is something that goes into kind of the CAD world when you're designing crowns or dentures in that sort of realm. You usually want to build in some sort of collision with the opposing tooth, and how much is the right amount. This is where this parameter comes into play. So set it for, I would just leave it here for now, and then play with it as you go along. But I have found these numbers to be to my liking. So let's get out of here and let's go over to the maxilla just to show you how these numbers right here, the canine, the lower canine, the lower incisors, will now change to upper centrals, lower laterals, or upper laterals. As of this version of the software, we only have level to curve. We do not have level to opposing teeth. That I believe we will change. Not because I necessarily want to use that, but some people that have noticed this function in the software in the beta release have asked, well, why can't they? And I know where they're coming from, because in the world of dentures and whatnot, we tend to we set the upper anterior teeth, we set the lower anterior teeth, then we set the lower posterior teeth, and then we set the upper teeth into occlusion. And that sounds all great. The problem is with dentures, we're working with perfect teeth. And with aligners, we're quite often, more often than not, I would say, working with adult dentition that's worn. And as much as function is always the priority, the function within the realm of incisal-gingival relation has a little bit of flexibility a lot of the time, but from an aesthetic standpoint, there's not a lot of flexibility. Meaning, if you have an upper premolar that's extremely worn and you align it into occlusion, or vice versa, the lower dentition is really worn and you try to level the upper premolar into ideal occlusion, well, you might have that premolar sticking out really high. Or not high, it might be intruded because you've leveled off the lower premolar is now flat topped, And to get that that premolar to not hit high, you have to intrude it. So the point, what I'm getting at is, and this is sort of my direction here as far as, so you can blame me if you don't like the default to level the curve. My preference is, from an aesthetic standpoint, to get all our smile line lined up when it comes to aligners. Get these all leveled in such a manner that's aesthetically pleasing, aligned, and then to bring in the lower and align those accordingly. Now, again, there's still nuance to each case. There's a little bit of compromise here and there, especially with worn dentition, or I don't mean aggressively worn, but any sort of wear facets and whatnot. So that's why the software is the way it is. We are looking to go ahead and add this so you can still use this level to opposing if you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and throw out an apology. It's my fault that it's not, when we developed this, we didn't really see a whole lot of function for this. I didn't expect it to be, turned off, disabled, but that's okay. That's on me from what I was explaining would be the workflow. So for now, you have the ability to level the curve, and you can adjust these parameters, and there you go. So let's go ahead and just see what this looks like. Let's just go ahead and say snap all teeth. And I have the IPR check turned off right now because it's just not really that relevant to this case. This video, I should say. Obviously it is relevant when you've got diastemas and whatnot. But I don't really want to focus on that in this video too much. So I will tell you that in this case, I like the flow of the second molars to first molars or premolars to canine, but maybe the centrals could come down just a little bit more, and definitely the laterals. So I could individually grab those, or I can just come over here and say, you know what, the centrals, I want them smack dab right on the occlusal plane. And for fun, let's just go ahead and see what this looks like. The laterals are going to look even shorter, but yeah, that's not too bad. Now let's bring these laterals down, and I'm going to say even, let's go less than a half a millimeter. Let's get them even closer in size gingerly. And let's turn off the curve just so we can actually just see. Yeah, that's not too bad. I think I'm going to put these laterals a little bit shorter. And let's snap all teeth. There we go. I think that's, sort of aesthetically pleasing. Again, ignore the diastema for now, because if you look, I would say this lateral is larger than this lateral. So let's just pretend we're planning to do some bonding or a veneer or something. Not really the point of this case so much, but so now you can see the alignment's done, and we're looking pretty good here. There is one problem I know, only because I've done this case before, and you'll see it in a minute, but I think it's kind of important to see how we correct for things that maybe don't get done exactly the way we want to. So let's go to the mandible, and we want to have this level to opposing teeth in the posterior, and we've got these all set here. So let's go ahead and snap curve. Now, like I kind of alluded to but didn't directly say, when we're doing this, it is best to align the upper teeth first, because now when we align the lower teeth, it has the actual ideal position of the lower teeth, of the upper teeth, to align to. So now let's snap all these teeth. Okay. So here's the alignment. A little bit funky on these first premolars, and I'm going to have to see why that is. Oh, it's because our curve is all funky, so I must have reset that at some point. So, or I guess, yeah, I reset it. So we're going to edit this curve. I tried to have it preset for you just so you didn't have to worry, watch me dilly-dally around with it. But I'm going to have to go ahead and edit this curve. So let's bring this forward. Let's bring, where's that node? Right over here. Out a little bit. I feel like I want this even farther. Oops. Let's continue editing this curve. And now let's try this. See how close we are. A lot of times for me it's just mess with it a little bit, then click it. Mess with it, click it. Mess with it, click it. And how are we looking in the buccal corridors? I think we're doing all right there. I feel like this side could come out just a little bit more, and that's when I start to mess with the asymmetric adjustment to the curve. So edit the curve. Now let's turn this off, and now I can grab this node. And where is it? I just follow this line until I get it. Why is it? Yeah, it's the model. I was going to say, that doesn't seem like that's where the node would be. There it is. Come out a little bit. And come forward a little bit more. Snap all teeth. And again, this is where, like, I like to just kind of make these big changes first until I actually get close to where I want, and then I'll refine from there. All right, and let's just see what kind of IPR we've got. On the tops, we got lots of 0.1s, and the bottoms 0.25s, all within very reasonable comfort on an ortho case, an aligner case. And if you don't like doing posterior IPR, then you can go in your parameters and dial that down to nothing, and then it forces it all in the anterior. Don't recommend, but you can do that. In that case, this alignment would not work, so it would be too much if you add all those up in just the anterior. So now we can start saying, okay, so what don't we like about this? Let's turn off the opposing, the upper, and say, hey, you know, this is pretty well leveled. Is there anything we just don't like about it? Well, we can tweak it. Of course, you know, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab this tooth. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to say switch to torque. I'm going to swing this root over a little ways, get it more centered. Make sure that it's not so inside on the lingual as well. Tip it, torque it back to the buckle a little bit. And then I can switch back to tip and center it. Okay, so you know there's again, this is to the nuance of the case and closing diastemas and whatnot. So this is a really crowded case. Like I said, it's a really more complex case. But I just want to show you sort of how aggressive or how effective the software can be in leveling the bite. When you'll notice that over here, well, on the maxilla, I find that it just happened, and this is probably just where I align the nodes on the teeth. This premolar is a little bit more labial than I'd like it to be. Okay, so I would probably grab this tooth, and after I've done the alignment, kind of bring it back in a little bit, and then re-intrude it a little. Okay, so that's more like what I should have done, just reviewing the whole case, you know, and then maybe this one as well. Tuck this in a little bit, got flared a little more than I'd like it to. Kind of squeeze it right between that canine and second premolar. And then go ahead and go back through the lower and, you know, address that accordingly. So I'll go ahead and clip the tooth. I'm not going to re-torque that root just because that's not the purpose of this video. But it'll make some occlusal adjustments on those premolars because those were occluding against those upper premolars. So anyway, yeah, hopefully that explains sort of the workflow of this. This is not a finished case. This is not how I finished the design in this case. You know, I have to do some pretty serious tweaking to get this molar where I want it to be. But hopefully you at least see kind of how these tools work over here, what we're doing with them, and sort of the mass correction movement they're allowing us to do. So again, I hope this video was helpful on this functionality of the software. Please, if you're watching this on YouTube, let us know in the comments if you have any questions. If you want to see more workflow videos on the software, on all facets of the software, make sure you go over to BlueSkyPlan.com. All modules of the software have videos there. You can also go to my website at barongrutterdds.com. And you can, of course, check me out here on YouTube. I'm assuming that's probably where you're watching this. And check out my other videos. I've got a few hundred videos on various BlueSkyPlan and other software videos. And some online courses out there. And hopefully more to come soon if you're looking to get on that. So, all right, thank you so much for watching. And you guys have a wonderful day. Bye for now.